But instead, I'm suggesting that we should ask the wealthiest to pay their fair share, those who have fortunes of over 20 million.
So right now in Canada, there is a freak out about the deficit. Oh, the deficit. Always about the deficit. This is, of course, because of the pandemic response. So we have a CERB, the $2,000 a month, and wage subsidy, other things that have been implemented during this pandemic to help people has caused this deficit. National Post here, freaking out about it. Canada's fiscal snapshot predicts $343 billion deficit as Liberals offer little intention to curb spending. Oh, got to curb that spending. Can't help people. Got to curb that spending. Jagmeet Singh, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, had a great response to this. So he was on CBC and watch what he said.
My concern is that given the fiscal snapshot that we just saw, we're going to start hearing a lot of pressure from the right, from conservatives saying we can't afford to help Canadians. We've already heard some of that coming out from different people who are saying that we've got to stop the CERB or stop helping people. And I just want to point out that that's always the case whenever there's a financial difficulty. It's always social programs that the conservatives want to cut. Liberals also have in the past cut the programs that people need, but instead I'm suggesting that we should ask the wealthiest to pay their fair share, those who have fortunes of over 20 million. What about some of the companies that we know that made massive profits during this pandemic? Amazon, Netflix, who pay effectively no taxes in Canada. What about the offshore tax havens, which is also something like $27 billion of wealth that's hidden purposely from Canada so that it's not contributed back into the economy? These are the things I think we need to address in the difficult times going forward.
I take your point on all of that. But again, when we stack up those ideas against the size of the deficit, and in no way am I saying, get rid of it right now, but you're talking about, let's say, a tax evasion worth $27 billion or $25 billion, I think is what the PBO initially said it was. The money that you would raise through the wealth tax is $5 billion, maybe increasing by 2028 to $10 billion. I mean, that is not substantial enough to get at what will eventually be a huge problem in this country. For example, if interest rates go up. What else would you propose the government do?
Well, what I'm saying is the approach can't be what we've seen in the past, where the choice is just, do we cut the services that people rely on and bring in austerity, or continue to let the wealthiest get away with not paying their fair share? I think that's just the wrong thing to do. And what we have to start with doing is changing that narrative and saying, you know what? The wealthiest should be the ones that contribute more. Those at the very top, the richest Canadians, those who are the 1%, those who have massive wealth, that's where we need to start. And then we need to go to the corporations that are the wealthiest corporations. That's the approach, I think, that makes the most sense. And after a crisis, investing in people is one of the best ways to stimulate the economy. To in any way stop doing that is only going to make the cost of this crisis even worse. And so I'm proposing a different approach. Let's, instead of putting the burden on working people, on families, and those that are struggling, let's ask those at the very, very top to pay their fair share.
So Jagmeet Singh here makes a number of fantastic points. Whenever there is this discussion, this focus on the deficit, gotta do something about that deficit. Can't spend, can't help people. It's always a kind of dog whistle to say, got to cut social programs, got to put in, austerity, privatization. That's what we got to do. You have to actually invest in people. And look, I would love to have a full, more of a conversation here about MMT, because if you actually if you look up Stephanie Kelton and her explanation of MMT, modern monetary theory, the only real limitations is on inflation. So you actually, governments are not run, countries are not run like companies are, like businesses. There's always this idea that, just like a business, you gotta have the money, the tax money to spend on this. That isn't how governments operate. That isn't how fiat currency operates. You can actually invest in people. It's just a matter of, where's your focus? Is your spending, is your help going to corporations, or is your help going to people, the middle class, the poor? So I'm not going to go, more into that here, as I'm not an expert, but you look into Stephanie Kelton and MMT, you'll get a better idea of what I'm talking about. So the entire conversation around deficit spending or the deficit is inherently flawed to begin with. So we need to have, a real education in terms of the media doing their job and actually better communicating the reality around spending. But also, in terms of what Jagmeet said about the wealth tax, it has massive support in Canada. So this is a recent poll from Abacus Data, a wealth tax to pay for the recovery. Total support, 75%. 75% of Canadians, which includes, by the way, conservatives. Conservatives back, I know it's somewhere here. Conservatives also back a wealth tax. Because, look, most people that are conservative, that view themselves as conservative, that vote conservative, are more just culturally conservative, not economically conservative. So when it comes to a wealth tax, most conservatives do not have over $20 million. Most conservatives are perfectly fine with raising taxes on Canadians that have over $20 million. So this is an incredibly popular policy. And it's the kind of thing that even the liberals, I say even as there's this idea that they're left when they're not, but even the liberals, if you think they're left, they do not support. Because the liberals, much like the conservatives, represent the interests of the wealthy, represent the interests of corporations. They are neoliberal parties. So they have a completely different view when it comes to the deficit, when it comes to priorities, when it comes to spending, than, say, the NDP and the Greens do. So there has to be a real... If we're going to talk about the deficit, which I really don't care to, but if we are going to, the focus has to be on a wealth tax, on massive corporations as well, and ensuring that they are paying their fair share. And the tax havens, the offshore tax havens, billions and billions of dollars in offshore tax havens, the tax that is not being, or money that is not being taxed, that is from the wealthy, the wealthiest in Canada, their money being protected. There has to be something seriously done about that. Not just around the edges, not just rhetorically, something actually done about getting tax money from those dollars. So there has to be the focus when it comes to deficit always has to be on who has the money, who is benefiting right now in society, and go after them. The idea that this mindset that we've been all brainwashed into of thinking, well, the deficit, look at the deficit, we got to cut social programs, we got to privatize, is completely backwards. If you think that's the way to think about this, you've been brainwashed. Unless you are, worth over 20 million or whatever, and you're incredibly wealthy, and you are also incredibly greedy, then I guess you're perfectly happy with that conversation. But for 99% of people, understand how the conversation around deficit and spending has been co-opted by the wealthiest in the country. And that they are the ones at the top, they are the ones that need to pay.